bring together the federal government and all 13 provinces and territories in an unprecedented collaboration. Today, we'll be signing the Canadian Mutual Recognition Agreement, removing regulatory barriers to the free movement of goods across provinces. And we're going to start doing that by lowering standards or compromising safety. We are our best facing, we are positioned to be able to face the threats from the US administration here if we work together. That's why, with BC as the chair, this initiative under the Canadian Free Trade reconciliation process, our government is proposed and led the nationwide effort to allow businesses to more freely expand their reach across the country. This agreement makes it easier for goods that meet the rules in one province or territory to be sold across Canada without extra approvals, labels, or testing. This applies nearly to all goods except for food. For businesses, it means they can sell across Canada, save time and costs, have a bigger reach, grow and create new jobs. For BC consumers, it means more choices, competitive pricing, and some same trusted standards across the country. And for global investors and companies, we're talking about ease of doing business, reliable and high sustainable standards, and integrated supply chains. We are creating one agreement, one market, and unlimited opportunity across the country. This means stronger BC economy and more jobs across industry. We're talking billions in unlocked potential. Research shows that removal of internal trade barriers through mutual recognition could boost Canada's GDP by up to $200 billion. That's why eliminating inter-provincial trade barriers is a goal and part of our Look West strategy. I'll close by saying this. This agreement is decades in the making. I'm proud that we finally reached this milestone with BC's leadership. I want to thank the team at the Ministry of Jobs and Economic Growth who have made this possible with their really hard work. I want to thank in particular my Deputy Minister, Fazil Millar, Assistant Deputy Minister, Kevin Boak, Executive Director, Steve Anderson, Robert Musgrave, Havan Semi, and the rest of the trade policy team. I want to say a big thank you for your leadership and all the work you've been doing to make today a reality. This is an important step, but it's just one step in the work that BC has still to do. And this is the largest red tape reduction in Canada's history, and it's just the beginning. Now, we've got to capture this momentum as we continue to build strong Canadian economy with free movement of all goods and services at its core. As detailed in Look West, BC is fully advocating for the expanded nature to include services and food. While the work continues, we also expect to have information and resources available for businesses posted by the end of the year. And we'll continue to work with our partners, both public and private, to build on this momentum, to make sure that it's easier to trade within our borders and to rely less on the United States of America. On that note, I'm really pleased to have with me today Bridget Anderson, and I'd like to invite Bridget to share her perspective on what this means for the business community. Thank you, Bridget.
Thanks very much, Minister Kahlon, for inviting me to be part of this announcement today. Today marks meaningful progress towards a more open, predictable, and competitive Canadian market. For years, many years, businesses have been held back by a patchwork of rules that can sometimes make it harder to move goods across provincial borders than across international ones. The economic cost has been well documented. Internal trade barriers are estimated to reduce Canada's GDP by tens of billions of dollars each year. That is why today's announcement matters. By advancing a more consistent framework for recognizing goods across the provinces, governments are taking an important step towards reducing duplication, lowering costs, and giving businesses, especially small and medium businesses, the ability to grow. The business community has long called for a simple principle. If a product is approved for sale in one province, it should be approved in all provinces. Mutual recognition is a proven international best practice. and it's encouraging to see the actions today. Mutual recognition should reduce complexity that has often acted as a hidden tax on growth. Mutual recognition was one of the primary recommendations that we made in our internal trade report in February, part of our Agenda for Growth, the 3% Challenge. Through our World Trade Center Vancouver, with the support of the province of BC and Canada, we help small businesses export to new countries for the first time and get the skills they need to export. Given the actions of our largest trading partner, trade diversification is critical. At the same time, the announcement today recognizes that we have an untapped domestic market. Today's announcement is good news, and we are thankful to the province for their role in negotiating the agreement. And while today is worth celebrating, it is important to encourage the momentum towards further integration and opportunity domestically, especially as we look towards food, alcohol, as well as improving labor mobility. As Canadians, we must meet the moment and build a stronger and more resilient economy in every province and every territory.
Good. Thank you so much, Bridget, for your leadership. And you've highlighted the many reports that the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade over the years have issued calling for these trade barriers to be removed, and decades of advocacy from various business leaders. And we're finally here today. Now, it's my honor on behalf of British Columbia to sign this historic agreement. I got a fancy pen to do that. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all of you for joining us today. And at this point, I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Minister, a reminder to reporters on the line, please press *1 to enter the queue and take your phone off of Bluetooth or speakerphone. You'll be limited to one question and one follow-up. Our first question is from Katie DeRosa, CBC.
Minister, it sounds like there's another document that's close to being signed, which is the MOU between Alberta and Ottawa on the pipeline, among other things. But some MPs are saying that it needs BC consent and it needs First Nations consent to lift the tanker ban. So have you heard from anyone in Ottawa, from the Prime Minister, and what's your reaction to what sounds like a very concrete next step in this pipeline?
Yeah, the conversation has been the same as it was last week or the week before that. Coastal First Nations have made their position clear that they don't believe it's in the interest of their region. And we've made our position clear that we have billions of dollars of investment right now, real projects that are ready to go. And we don't want to put any of those projects at risk. We want to see projects come across the line. And from my understanding, since that time, there is still no private sector proponent. And so we continue to urge the federal government, if they want to increase the capacity, to look at the existing pipeline that the taxpayers of Canada already own and look to increase the capacity there and support projects that are ready to go so that we can actually get real investments in our communities. Today is an example of how we can actually make a real difference for businesses in our communities, increase the economic opportunities. These are the types of actions we want to see, not hypothetical conversations.
Before we do a follow-up, Katie, we've got a problem with Mercury, and so we need to just pause for a moment while we get the line back so all the reporters can join in again.
Welcome to the conferencing center.
Okay, that's
Please
good to
hold
know.
for the next available operator.
Yeah, it's not.
Hello, this is the
Conversation
operator.
just opened.
Standing by.
Hello, is this the audio feed?
It sure is. We were cut out on your end. We're just trying to reconnect here.
I'll place you back there. One moment.
Thank you.
Oh, I know. I know. Okay, here we go.
Follow-up, Katie?
If BC is adamant against this pipeline, is it going to take a lawsuit to stop it?
Well, I think we're getting much further ahead than where we are. I think at this point, we continue to make our position clear. The Premier has been very clear to Ottawa. Coastal First Nations have been pretty clear to Ottawa. We want to focus on the billions of dollars of investments that are in front of us. Let's work to get the investments, the private sector investments that are in front of us across the line. Let's try to create good paying jobs in our communities. That's where our focus is right now. And, really having discussions about a hypothetical project that has no private sector proponent at this time, it actually distracts from all the good work we could be doing together.
Question comes from Rob Buffum, CTV.
Hi, Minister. I just wanted to follow up on Katie's questions. I have your point on BC's objection to a pipeline, but has this government, have you or the Premier or anyone else in this government heard from the federal government that there is such an MOU that is close to being signed?
Yeah, I'm not aware of that. Certainly, I haven't had any conversations with the federal government on this. I have had the opportunity to meet with Minister Hodgson and many federal ministers, met with Minister Jolie just last week. This topic did not come up. And I'm not aware of any further information from the federal government to this point. But I will reemphasize that now is the time to focus on the billions of dollars of investments that we have that are going to be able to create jobs. 40% of the national projects are in BC, and quite frankly, we could have 100% of them. There's a lot more projects that are ready to go, and I think in the interest of Canada, it makes sense to focus on real projects that proponents are ready to make investments in, and instead of focusing on a project which will require the federal government or Alberta to buy an entire new pipeline. Let's encourage the private sector to get involved, and that's what we're doing here in British Columbia.
You got a follow-up, Rob?
I do. Just wondering about today's MOU. I spoke to the wine industry earlier today who expressed concerns that despite an MOU related to wine, for example, between Alberta and BC, there was still a significant tax on wine sent direct to consumer to Alberta. So I guess I want to clarify, does today's MOU, it looks like wine is not impacted by it either. And what do you say to criticisms that notwithstanding a pre-existing MOU in relation to wine, there's still a fair bit of work to be done on that front?
Well, I'll say on this agreement here, this is huge. When I was the minister in this ministry 7 years ago, we were talking about this, and not much happened until the U.S. administration took the actions that they did. We do want to see this expand. We do want this to go into food. We do want to see this go into services and labor mobility. I agree with Bridget's assessment that we want to see this go across the board because we know the economic benefits of this. Now, there are trade agreements, and always with trade agreements, you have some challenges in implementation. We expect to release a document for the business community so they have an understanding by the end of the year of how this applies and how this can be beneficial for them. And we hope that will address any of the concerns that they may have.
Our next question comes from Wolfgang Deppner, Canadian Press.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. Thank you for taking my question. Let's briefly talk about the pipeline again. How surprised is your government by today's announcement? So on Monday, the Premier said that a pipeline didn't come up during discussions that he had with the Prime Minister and First Ministers. And yet today we find out about this apparent MOU. Can you sort of talk about the optics of BC finding this out Wednesday morning, perhaps through the media? Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think it's always better to have governments be open and have these conversations. And, we're learning some of this stuff from the media. But I will say that the position that I've seen come out of the federal government, and certainly the BC Liberal MPs, is what our understanding is, which is the Prime Minister has said that it's going to require discussions with coastal First Nations and the province. And we've made our positions clear. We want to continue to focus on the billions of dollars of investments that are here at our doorstep. And we don't want to put at risk those investments. We've been working very hard to get them to this point, and it does not make sense to be putting all those projects at risk, all that potential employment at risk when we're talking about a hypothetical project that has no proponent.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Let's briefly talk about cross-Canada trade here. Why wasn't food included in this particular round? And can you sort of point to those provinces who stood in the way? And again, why was food not included? And can you sort of talk about who stands in the way here? Thank you.
Well, I'll just say that today is an important day because not only is this decades in the making, it gets us at a point where we finally have momentum. And we can't stop now. We've been asked from a provincial perspective to lead this table. I mentioned the amazing staff within the ministries that have been doing this work, and we're going to continue to keep that momentum up. I can say that there are some provinces that have had concerns around food, some concerns around services, some concerns around labor mobility, but I can confirm that BC is not one of them. We believe we can remove these barriers and not compromise on safety, not compromise on standards. It will only benefit Canada, and we will continue to lead those tables and discussions as we go forward.
Our next question comes from Alec Lazenby, Vancouver Sun.
Hi, Minister. I was wondering if you could provide specifics. We hear a lot about interprovincial trade barriers. To a lot of people, I think they still seem rather nebulous in terms of what they actually are, how they actually impact the flow of goods. Can you provide specifics in terms of some products that this new agreement will help, how they're being held up in terms of moving from province to province right now, and specifically how this agreement helps them move more freely?
Yeah, no, and I'll have Bridget kind of give some examples of maybe some of the businesses that she's heard from. But I've heard from businesses who sell products in other provinces or try to sell products in other provinces and have to spend years trying to figure out what the rules are. And after a while, give up because it's just too complicated. The process is too complicated depending on the province. And I think the Prime Minister has summed it up well. We need one rule across the country so that if an investor from overseas wants to come invest here, they understand that if they make a product in British Columbia, they can sell it in other jurisdictions. So there'll be a whole host of companies that will come forward. We've been engaging with businesses about the changes we've made. There's overwhelmingness, happiness coming from all of them. And what's going to be important is that document that we will prepare for them at the end of the year, which will show them how they can lay out and capitalize on these changes. And we're working with our partners in the business community to make sure that it's easily accessible. The example I used with my colleagues is if you make a hockey puck here in British Columbia, you should be able to sell it in Ontario and Quebec. And believe it or not, there's challenges with that. And I know the Prime Minister likes hockey analogies. And so I hope today is an opportunity for us to celebrate, but also for the federal government to continue to show some partnership to drive this across labor, drive this across other sectors that need to have those barriers removed as well. Bridget, you want to jump in?
Well, I'm thinking back to probably 20 years ago when I worked in this building, and the conversations were very much as they were over the last year or so, is when we were going to get a deal on internal trade. And so this is a big step forward today, which is why the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade is happy to be here. When we think about mutual recognition, some of the examples over the years have been things like baby car seats and toilets and tires, just products and goods that are just so difficult to trade within Canada. So being able to have a mutual recognition list will be incredibly important for businesses across Canada. You think about small and medium businesses, and many of them who are getting their trade training through the World Trade Center. It is easier for them to be able to export to Mexico or to destinations in Asia or Europe than it is to export to Saskatchewan or Manitoba, for example. So these barriers do need to be removed, and they will really impact small and medium businesses. It is really time to celebrate this important milestone. It's also time, though, to keep the gas pedal on to ensure the momentum continues so that the trade deal also includes food, wine in British Columbia, a really important export of ours in British Columbia, and also it improves labor mobility.
Follow-up, Alex?
Here's my follow-up. Bridget, you mentioned car seats. Presumably the technology for car seats in BC isn't that different from car seats in Ontario or Quebec or other provinces. And then there's other products like vehicles, big manufacturers, they manufacture vehicles in a lot of the same way, no matter where it is. So what exactly, I guess, is the holdup there in terms of selling them in different provinces, presumably if it's, the same product?
I mean, that's the genius of mutual recognition. If one product is good enough to sell in one province, then it should be good enough to sell in other provinces. And there will be an exemption list. I have yet to see that full list. I think that is still in development. But that's the idea, is that, when it comes to labeling, or it comes to different kinds of parts that might be used in a product like a car seat or a toilet, are they really that different across Canada? No, would be the answer. So having mutual recognition will allow for a seamless transition of goods and movement of goods across Canada.
Next question comes from Amelia Macauer, Radio Canada.
Thank you for taking my question. Mr. I just would like to go back to the pipeline. I've talked to the Premier's office, Daniel Smith, and they've said that they've heard Premier's EV's concerns, and that basically, I'm quoting them, they agree that there needs to be a credible proponent and extensive First Nations engagement and co-ownership for this project to move forward. So what do you say to that?
Well, I would say that if they've heard our concerns, then they've heard our concerns, and the conversation shouldn't be happening anymore. But that being said, a recognition from Alberta that they're going to need to talk to the province, they're going to need to talk to coastal First Nations, is an important step. But they've probably already heard from them, because we've had press conferences with all of them on that. And I'll just emphasize again the importance of the investments we have in front of us right now. We spend a lot of time talking about a hypothetical project when we could be talking about how we can land these major investments that are right in front of us. And if we have energy and capacity at the federal government, at the provincial level, let's figure out how to do that. Let's figure out how to unlock those projects and not use our energy on something that at this point, there's nothing other than a PR room in Alberta.
And for my follow-up, it seems like it all falls on Alberta's shoulders to convince BC and the First Nations. So what would it take for them to be able to convince you to move forward with that pipeline?
Well, anytime a proponent comes forward, they take a responsibility to engage with community, to engage with province, engage with workers. That's with every project. And so I think what's important is that Alberta do that work as they go forward. But what I can also reemphasize is what they've heard already from coastal First Nations, what they've already heard from the province, and our message to the federal government remains the same. We want to make sure that the projects we have in front of us are getting across the line. If the federal government wants to invest billions of dollars and get economic return, we have a list of projects that are ready to go that they can make those investments in. But if they want to spend billions of dollars on product and a project that really has no private sector proponent, it doesn't make sense at this time.
Final question in the room goes to Mark Page, Black Press.
Yeah, I guess, obviously you've been hearing that this has been, talked about for 20 years. Why did this take so long? And have you heard any concerns from, any businesses about potential job losses, like maybe, something's manufactured here where it might be cheaper to make it elsewhere? And, from what I understand, that has been some of the concerns over the years from certain jurisdictions. And is there any concern within BC about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. First off, the biggest thing I've been hearing from business leaders, and again, Bridget can jump in as well, is of course the ease of being able to do business in other jurisdictions, but it's also the costs. All the different rules in different provinces, the different barriers that are in place, it all adds layers and layers of costs. And as Bridget highlighted, it's frustrating to have a business in BC that makes an excellent product who sees it more viable for them to be selling in Asian markets than to sell within Canada. And that's what we want to address. I don't see at this point any concerns around businesses perhaps losing jobs because of competition. We believe that some competition is healthy. We need to be able to continue to innovate and find ways to do that. And our BC businesses are ready for that competition. Let's see if Bridget wants to jump in.
The business community has been advocating for mutual recognition and full internal trade for a very, very long time. And it is about the ease of goods being able to move across the country. I mean, it's the reason that we put together a report in February that aligned with our Agenda for Growth, our 3% challenge, which is a pathway for government to achieve 3% GDP growth. And internal trade is a big piece of that. And what that will do, it will create tens of thousands of jobs by getting to 3% GDP growth. It will ensure that there's government revenues for health and education. So it's a big piece of the puzzle, and businesses have long been advocating for this. And so businesses are very happy to see this important step and want to see even more urgently.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just looking for some more specifics on like what some of the holdups are for things such as food. You know, I remember early in my journalism career, I covered a little bit of a milk dating thing between Washington and Montana, where one had a use by date, one had a sell by date. Is that the sort of thing we're talking about, or is it deeper than that? And maybe you could just give us some specifics.
Yeah, I would say that the negotiations are always challenging, and the positions publicly are not necessarily always the positions internally, and that makes it really challenging for us. And yes, there are provinces that feel that having trade barriers will somehow protect key businesses within their jurisdictions. We believe that removing these trade barriers will force some competition, will lower costs for businesses, and will actually create a lot more jobs. And it is interesting to have a new Democratic government pushing for removing trade barriers across the country, and in often cases, some conservative governments pushing against it. But we believe this is in the best interest of all the businesses, but also workers in our communities. And that's why we're celebrating today. That's why we've been chairing this committee and doing the work. And we're prepared to continue to show leadership across labor mobility, services, and other areas as well.
Seeing no questions from journalists on the phone, we will end there. Thank you for joining us, everyone. That concludes today's event.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you.